everybody, and welcome back to MapTalk, Episode 3. We're finally back. It's been a long time coming, but we're here, and if you're new to MapTalk, well, basically, we just talk about maps and interesting things out there in the world. Today's episode is going to be about isolated ocean islands. Yes, we're going way out there to the literal middle of nowhere, to the furthest reaches of the world, to look at some of the populated and unpopulated little specks of land out on the giant blue ocean. Should be interesting, so let's get started. Real quick, before we get going, just make sure to comment, like, subscribe, click that bell, all that stuff. I really appreciate it. Really helps the channel. And yeah, I look forward to getting more videos out for you as well in the future. So let's go explore. So the first island we're going to feature today is the only one of these islands that I've actually been to, and that's Bermuda. A secluded island in the North Atlantic. It's pretty secluded. It's not too far from the United States, but it took me 4 days on a cruise to get there, so it's out there a bit. As you can see, it's shaped like a fish hook. That's what all the locals made sure to repeatedly tell me when I was there. We docked here at the Royal Naval Dockyard and drove into the capital, Hamilton. I got to check out the northern end, St. George. It's not a lot of land, but still, they pack a lot in there, I'll say that. And it's nice, nice and warm. Bermuda geographically exists on this, which is the Bermuda Rise, which I'm not sure about its origins, but it almost looks like a hotspot or something, perhaps. But that's just a quick little look at that spot. Bermuda, by the way, is a British possession. But the first real secluded out there islands I want to check out are actually further to the south. So we're going to skip over the Azores and Cape Verde here and head to the southern Atlantic. There are actually 3 islands down here I want to visit, all belonging to Great Britain, by the way. The first one, just south of the equator, is the island of Ascension, here in the middle of the Atlantic. Located about 2,000 miles from both Africa and South America. It's pretty secluded. Ascension was discovered in, I believe, 1501, and it's mainly used today as a stopover for ships across in the Atlantic, and as a Royal Air Force base as well, as you can see here. About 800 people live on the island, and it looks to be almost desert-like, except for the very interior. I wonder if it's always been like that, or maybe that's from human interaction. Not sure, but definitely, as you can see, very far out here. Just a peak on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and secluded, isolated. That's the word I'm looking for, isolated. Our next spot is just to the southeast. Well, not just, it's quite a ways, but to the southeast here is the island of St. Helena. Population about 4,400, and this is a much more known spot. Definitely has a bit of a tourist industry going here. Beautiful island, by the way. I've never been there, but it looks beautiful. Of course, this island is perhaps most famous, and most people probably know of it, because it is the final home of one Napoleon Bonaparte, the twice exiled Napoleon. He, after the Battle of Waterloo in 1815 and the 100 Days, they decided that they should probably exile this man much further away than the first time, and they did so way out in the Atlantic, and it actually worked. Napoleon lived here from his exile in 1815 to his death in 1821, and his residence here is called Longwood, giggity, and as you can see, it's quite nicely manicured. And it's definitely, here's his grave. It says it's there, so I'm going to assume it's there. And it's definitely one of the spots that tourists to this area would be going. Now, one of my favorite spots is down here. This is the capital, Jamestown. As you can see, this town is built into this deep valley. It's amazing. It's like really nestled in there. That's so cool. And right here is Jacob's Ladder, which is a 699, roughly 700 step staircase And let's just take a little look here. I just want to see what this looks like. Ooh, yeah, look at that. There's the harbor, and there's the capital. Look at that. That's cool. And of course, the civilization has expanded out and further areas of the island. I believe when this island was first discovered, it was totally green and lush forest, and for some reason, all of the forests have kind of retreated to the inland area of the island, a higher elevated area, which I'm not sure. It probably has something to do with human interaction. And here's the brand new airport they built recently, which I guess was quite a project, because there's not much flat land on this island. There's not much land in general to work with. Well, that's St. Helena, which, like I said, is a very interesting island and probably deserves its own video in that sense. But now I want to move to a much, much more isolated island, much further to the south. So let's head there. Tristan da Cunha is the most isolated, populated island in the world. And here it is. Home to roughly 250 to 300 people, probably closer to 250. All of whom live in the single settlement on the island, Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, which is this small little collection of houses here. How quaint. The island is over 2,300 miles from the next populated place, which would be in South Africa. The island is only accessible by boat. As you can see, there's nowhere to build an airfield. So it's at least, I'd say, a 6-day trip to get here from Cape Town, South Africa, and much longer from, say, Britain, London, where this island belongs to. And I believe they only get 2 shipments a year in this small harbor, so if you're not on that ship, you're not getting out of here for a while. Geographically, the island is actually the top of a massive volcano, shield volcano, that exists on the Tristan hotspot here in the South Atlantic. This hotspot has also formed a couple other uninhabited islands nearby, namely Inaccessible Island and the Nightingale Islands down here. Now, much further to the south, well, not much, but a considerable distance to the south is another island called Gulf Island, which is technically uninhabited and is itself one of the most isolated islands in the world, period. There is, however, down here, where is it? There it is. A small research station, a weather station, so there are temporary residents on this island. But yeah, this is way out here. So I find this to be a rather fascinating island. It's about as secluded as you can get, and I think just about everyone here is probably related to one another, would be my guess at this point. They've been isolated for so long. But it's interesting for sure. Now, like I said, this is the most isolated inhabited island in the world. Let's just get it out of the way and get to the most isolated island in the world, period, which is a little bit further to the south in the Atlantic. Bouvet Island is a literal ice cap here at the southern end of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And it is the most isolated island in the world. 2,600 miles from South Africa, 1,000 miles from the nearest land of any type, which is the aforementioned Gulf Island up here. It is not a place that you want to end up at. You don't want to get shipwrecked here, trust me. Aside from being incredibly isolated, I mean, just look at it. It's a giant dome of ice with a little bit of land here on the western side. It used to be a whaling station in the 19th century. It's a Norwegian possession, by the way. And I believe there are a couple of small buildings somewhere. Maybe here? No, not there. A survival hut and a small chapel of some type. But I haven't been able to find it on the map. But yeah, there it is. The loneliest place on Earth. Don't get stuck there, folks. I mean, it's even far from another isolated place, which is the South Sandwich Islands here. These are all uninhabited, volcanic in origin. In fact, some of them are active volcanoes, like this one. Look at that. little bit of smoke coming out of there. And, of course, over here is one of my favorite islands in the entire world, South Georgia Island, which was also a former whaling colony, with many communities popping up throughout the years, mainly in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Today it's uninhabited except for a few temporary residents here at the South Georgia Museum and the King Edward Point Station, where occasionally a ship will come in every now and then. But other than that, it's just remnants of old whaling towns, and stunningly beautiful, I imagine. Harsh conditions, but it itself is rather isolated. I mean, you see how far it is just from the southern tip of South America, which in itself is also very secluded and isolated. Been using that word a lot today. But moving on, let's head out into the mecca of isolated and interesting islands, which would be the South Pacific. Now, moving west, we get to, of course, the well-known and famous Easter Island, also a Chilean possession. Famous for its stone statues, known as Moai. Everybody has probably heard of Easter Island, mainly because of that. It's about 7,700 people who live on the island permanently, and it does get, of course, a bustling tourist business as well. And interesting volcanic features here. You can tell what the origin of this island is. But yes, always interesting to look at Easter Island. There's some of them from Hawaii. Not very high resolution photo there, but they are there, I assure you. Now, let's keep moving further west. And as you can see, we start to get a little bit more populated here. Just a little bit more as we reach French Polynesia. And we get our first look at the tropical atoll, or atoll, however you like to say that. Which is basically a circular reef surrounding a lagoon. Now these form usually around islands that previously broke through the surface of the water, either during times of lower sea level or before they were eroded away. The reef forms around them, and as the mountain slowly subsides beneath the water, the reef continues to build upward towards the sunlight because it's alive. And eventually the island will sink below the water, but the reef will remain, at least for a time, and produce eventually small sandy islands that, well, sometimes can be populated, although these... Oh, there's a small village. And that's basically how an atoll is formed. And there are a lot of them. They generally only take place in the tropics because coral reefs really only grow in warm water. You're not going to see this in the southern oceans or far north. But yeah, there's a lot of them out here. And we're starting to get to islands that are, I would say, isolated, but not quite as much as the ones we were just checking out. You've got Tahiti here, French Polynesia, and Bora Bora, which is quite a tourist destination, so not exactly isolated, but let's move on. Now, I'm going to skip many of the islands here in the Pacific, because otherwise we'll be here all day. But there are many. You know, you've got the Marshall Islands, you've got Kiribati, not Kiribati, Kiribati, Guam, the Mariana Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, Nauru. Nauru is a tiny country, one of the least populated sovereign nations in the world. Basically just this island. I mean, yes, these certainly are out here, but they're not the most isolated of the isolated, as I keep saying that word over and over again. Let's head now to our final basin, which will be the Indian Ocean, where you have some very interesting island nations. You have the Maldives, which is another famous vacation spot for many atolls here. You have Seychelles, another beautiful tropical country. Comoros, here near the African mainland. Out here you have, by Madagascar of course, Reunion and Mauritius, two volcanic islands. But I want to get really far out there. So let's head south down here to what looks to be an oceanic plateau. Yes, it is. The Kerguelen Plateau, as it's called. And I want to head to the Heard and McDonald Islands. These are possessions of Australia. In fact, Heard Island has Australia's highest peak. It's higher than any mountain on the mainland. Mawson Peak is actually taller and is an active volcano. To the west is the much smaller McDonald Island, or islands. You have this tiny rock here and what used to be a separate island here, but as you can see, due to volcanic activity, this island has actually grown quite a bit recently. This photo is probably only a few years old, and you can see all the sediment in the water and the little bits of smoke coming out of some of the vents. So it's a hot spot of activity down here, and as I just said, these are some of the only exposed spots, along with these islands to the north, of the Kerguelen Plateau, which is this structure here, and at one time, millions of years ago, was actually above water, and perhaps had lush forests. That's interesting to think about, right? That's going to do it for this episode of Map Talk. Thanks for watching, as always. I could go on for hours about the thousands of islands out there, but I don't think people have the attention span for such things, neither do I, so we'll just end it here. But as always, thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing if you did, and if you didn't, make sure you do, and click that bell. Also make sure to comment and like. I appreciate all the interaction I get on these videos, it really helps. So yeah, until next time, thanks for watching, and enjoy the ride. I'll see you then.